नमस्ते नमस्ते हरि ओम ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः गुरवे सर्वलोकानां भिषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां भारतीकरुणापात्रं भारतीपदभूषणं भारतीपदमारूढं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विधुशेखरभारतीम् ॐ सुब्रह्मण्याय देवाय वैद्यनाथात्मजाय च सुब्बरामय्य शिष्याय नमो ज्ञानप्रदायक Namaste. I am Abhinand. I welcome you all to this discourse conducted by Sanatana Dharma Charitable Trust for Margari Jnana Ganu Nityotsava. So I thank Margari Ganu Nityotsava organizers and also the Sanatana Dharma Charitable Trust for giving this opportunity to me for this discourse. And I would like to introduce myself. I am Abhinand. I stay in Bangalore and I work for India Facts as an editor. And apart from this, I have qualified. I am a qualified engineer and work also as a freelance tutor. Apart from this, I have studied Vedanta under Vidwan Sri Subramaniam Vaidyanathan Mahodaya, my Acharya, and this has been for the past 6 years. And apart from this, I have studied Rigveda Samhita with the Angas under Vidwan Sri Krishnamurti Shastrinaha, Sri Praveen Bhatt Mahodaya, and Sri Srinivas Murthy Mahodaya, and the Angas from Vidwan Dhali Lakshmi Narasimha Bhatt Mahodaya. Apart from this, I would like to introduce my Guru, Vidwan Sri Subramaniam Vaidyanathan ji. He is into Vedantic teaching of Vedanta for the past 3 decades in Bangalore, and he is the disciple of Dr. Subbaramaya Mahodaya, who was the direct disciple of Srimad Chandrasekhar Bharati Mahaswaminaha and Srimad Abhinav Vidyatirtha Mahaswaminaha, the esteemed Jagat Gurus of Sringeri Sharda Peetham. And with this background of my Guru and brief introduction of myself, I would like to proceed for today's pravachanam. Today's discourse is titled as Vedanta, Relevance of Vedanta for Working Professionals, its Study and Practice. So before we begin, I think it's a well-known fact that most of us here in India know that we Bharatavarsha, residents of Bharatavarsha, we are bestowed upon, we are inheritors of this great system of knowledge called Vedanta, which has passed on through generations in Guru Shishya Parampara, and it is continuing and it's ever flourishing. So this system of Vedanta, which literally means the end of the Vedas, this system of Vedanta is something which literally means the end of Vedas, but the actual meaning being the conclusive of end of Vedas. What Vedas want you to finally achieve in your life is something which is mentioned in Vedanta. Vedanta comprises of the Upanishads, which are the latter portions of each Veda, and there are texts which expound on Vedanta like Brahma Sutra Bhashya, Brahma Sutras, and the Bhagavad Gita, the words of divine words of Lord Krishna to Arjuna. So these 3 are the primary texts known as the Prasthanatraya, and this is Vedanta as an academic pursuit, but the whole Vedantic knowledge is something which is ingrained in this in these three texts. And this has been propounded by Srimad Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad Pada in his Advaita Vedanta. He has brought out the importance of Upanishadic teachings and the relevance of Upanishadic teaching Vedanta in our day-to-day life. So in this talk, I would definitely I would concentrate on the importance of Vedanta, its practice and pursuit, and how working professionals could benefit from the pursuit of Vedanta. And so with this general background, it's now imperative for us to understand what is the benefit of studying Vedanta. As we discussed earlier, that we are proud inheritors of Vedantic knowledge. Unfortunately, many of our own brethren and people who are outside the Sanatana Dharma, they pose this question to us that what is the use of Vedanta? What is the use of studying of Vedanta or practicing Vedanta for that matter? Or is Vedanta actually relevant in the days of technology, the advances in technology? So these questions, though unfortunate, needs to be answered, because these questions are not only raised by non-believers or Nastikas, it's also raised by our own brethren who are Astikas, but out of innocence or maybe ignorance or other causes, such questions crop up in most of our minds. So such a question needs to be answered as to what's the use of Vedanta and whether it is relevant today. So for this, let us understand the use of Vedanta. The main benefit of Vedanta, the primary goal of Vedanta, the reason for which we have Vedanta is something which has, the Vedas itself tell that the Parama Purushartha, the moksha, the liberation of the soul is the main aim of Vedanta. And what does liberation mean? For this question means that putting an end to the cycle of birth and death, to the samsara sagara, the ocean called samsara, coming out of this and attaining the supreme is the primary aim of Vedanta. So how would we reconcile to the fact that rebirths do occur, or how would we know that there is transmigratory existence, or we have another life after this life, or what's after life, or what happens after life? So such questions are not new. People do pose such questions even to this day, but these questions have been discussed, debated, and answered by Bhagavad Acharya in his Bhashyas. So first, of course, the Vedas, we accept, we Sanatana Dharma, followers of Sanatana Dharma, accept Vedas to be the ultimate truth, the Parama Pramana, and Vedas declare about the existence of other janmas, other lokas, other births. So we will have to accept this. And for those who further argue and want to get a definitive answer, rebirths can be inferred also. The existence of rebirths can be proven by inference. So we see a rich man suddenly becoming poor, or poor man suddenly becoming rich, or a rich man becoming further rich and dying rich, filthy rich, or a poor man struggling to make ends meet and then meets a sad end. So such we find such instances in our daily life. So the only way we can answer to such questions, like why such a thing happens in such in an individual's life, is only by accepting the fact that rebirths or past karmas which have ensured the sorrow or the joy of this birth. The prarabdha karmas, the actions which we have performed in the past births bring into effect the sorrow and joy which we face in the present birth, and whatever actions we perform in this birth is taken on to the next birth. So this is a continuous cycle. Bhagavad Acharya in his Bhaja Govindam says, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jathare Shayanam, Iha Samsare Bahudustare Nahi, Iha Samsare Bahudustare Kripaya Pare Pahimurare. That is, he pleads Ishvara, God, that for each birth, I am born In each life I am born, I die, and then again I enter a mother's womb. I am again born, again I die, live and die, and there's life and death, life and death. So to come out of this cycle, he pleads Ishvara that please give me this Vedantic knowledge so that I can come out of this. Please liberate me from this cycle of birth and death. So the primary aim of Vedanta is to come out of this cycle of birth and death. So how would one want to achieve this, or how can a person achieve this coming out of this cycle and liberating? Is through pursuit of Vedanta, the practice and study of Vedanta. So this is the main benefit, and along with that we see another benefit of studying Vedanta is an end to our desires, our longings, our attachments. We generally tend to like something. The moment we see it, we have this intense urge to procure that object. This is a very common observation these days. Working professionals may note, because we live in an individualistic economy. We perhaps because of the present day setup, economical setup, we perhaps we may go log into an e-commerce app, and we may like some item, and the moment we see it, we would want to procure it at any cost. And at that moment, the moment you want to procure it, the moment you have the desire to procure it, that's when your mind gets agitated, and it's agitated till the time you receive it. So as soon as you book it, you pay money for it, or you are deciding whether you will pay now or pay later or such things. And as soon as you pay it, you are waiting, you are tracking your consignment, and perhaps trying to receive your consignment earlier. So your mind is engaged in that, and then finally when the product comes to you, the item comes to you, that for a fraction of a second your mind is satisfied, or rather you're happy because your mind is not agitated, and your mind has got this assurance, satisfaction that you have received whatever you wanted. So the moment that you get this item, the next worry starts, whether the product is working properly, or you'll have to say book something else to make this product work, or you'll have to return it, or you'll have to give it to someone else, or maybe you'll have to show it to someone else. So such a mental agitation again begins. So only for a fraction of a second, after achieving after procuring something, getting some material object in your hands, you are temporarily satisfied, and because of this temporary satisfaction, you are having a calm mind. So unfortunately, the object has not made your mind calm. The fact that you received your object and you don't need anything else, which stays only for a fraction of a second, makes you calm, and not the object on its own. So we fail to realize this, and we go on with pursuing purchasing other stuff, or pursuing other pursuits. So such a relentless pursuit agitates our mind and disturbs the peace of mind. So Vedanta primarily aims at culling of all our desires. So Kama Esha Krodha Esha. So how in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that because of desire of an object, we get agitated, and because of that we get frustrated if we don't get the object, and then it comes out in the form of anger, and say you get it and you receive the object, then you are happy, but then again you want something else. So it's like adding fuel to the fire. So there will be a relentless cycle and never-ending cycle of desire and fructification of the desire. So to come out of this cycle also, we have to pursue Vedanta. And another use of Vedanta is the Karma Yogic Sadhana. Vedanta specifies, Lord Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita 12th chapter, that all your actions, whatever, it may not be possible for you to go ahead and for 24 hours do dhyana like how rishis were doing, and stay in that mode, and not come back to your life, and have, have your normal course of life. That's not possible by everyone. So he gives this suggestion to Krishna, to Arjuna, that whatever pursuit you are doing, whatever karma is enshrined upon you, whatever you are supposed to do, you do it with full faith and dedication, and surrender the actions and the fruit to me, to Ishvara. So this all Krishna tells to Arjuna. So by doing that, our attachment towards the action, the karma also comes out, and because we do it with this bhava, this feeling that we are doing it for Ishvara and not for our own self, there is some excellence we do. So always, when we are doing something for God or for our own self, for that matter, we do work for our own self. We do it with a lot more perfection than we do it for a third person. So when we do it for God, because ultimately Vedanta tells that Ishvara Gururatmeti, that is the Ishvara, God, the Guru, and the Atma are nothing but the same entity in three different forms. So when you do and perform an action for your own sake or for God's sake, you do it with utmost care and utmost excellence. So do all your actions in such a manner, and then finally dedicate the actions and the fruits of those actions to Ishvara. So by practicing Vedanta, we will also ensure that there is some excellence in whatever we do. This is another advantage of Vedanta. This is a very important, pertinent observation which we have to make. In the present day world, especially for working professionals, it's a common observation that we strive hard, slog for days together in office, and perhaps satisfy our goal. We take our careers, our jobs to be very important, and give our heart and blood to the job which we are doing, which is a good thing, and which should be done even as per the Shastras also. It should be done. But what happens sometimes is such a good effort, unfortunately for some of them, such good effort is put down by, say, a recession or a job loss or layoff or a pandemic, or it could also turn out into promotion for a peer, and you are denied a promotion or an hike or any such thing. So these are common things which we observe in our working environment. So how do we deal with such situations is also taught by Vedanta. That of course comes through karma yogic sadhana only. You have nothing in your hands except performing actions. Performing action, or going your job, you can do it. You have the only option of doing it in the most excellent manner, and the fruits of that action must be dedicated to Ishvara. The moment you feel that you have the ownership of the fruits as well, that's when all the mental agitation, all the stress, depression sets in. So Vedanta teaches you how to tackle such situations. Unfortunately, such situations create stress, and we get into depression, go for medication, and such things. Such things are bound to happen. But medications are for the brain. The modern medicine assumes stress and depression to be in the brain, and the medicines are given to the brain. None of the medicines are given to the mind, because modern medicine doesn't consider mind as an entity. But just because it doesn't consider mind to be an entity, we cannot deny the existence of mind. So we have to understand that mind is something which should be cured, and mind can be cured only through Vedanta, through philosophy, through Atma Jnana, by imbibing this thought, Vedantic thought, that we should have santosha, satisfaction in whatever situation we are, in whatever situation Ishvara puts us in, God puts us in. We should be contented. Contentment is something which we all should strive for, and we all must have. And this is something which is taught in Vedanta, not through not any other science. for that matter. So Vedanta also helps us in dealing with karma yogic sadhana, the issues in karma in our daily life through karma yogic sadhana. So these are the primary benefits of Vedanta. The main aim, of course, being liberation or Atma-dhyana. There are two more sort of other uses of Vedanta, which may not interest everyone, but for those who are interested to pursue Vedanta as their own ultimate goal in their own lives, Vedanta is something which is required for them, especially, needless to say. So Vedanta, the practice of Vedanta is required for those who want to pursue and master in Vedanta both as an academic study and also personal pursuit of sadhana, as we call it in Shastras. So Vedanta is required for that as well. And besides this, study of Vedanta and mastering helps in preserving the Shastra itself, the Guru Shishya Parampara. Vedanta, as we just discussed, that has been passed on through generations through Guru Shishya Parampara. So by studying that, we also help in upkeeping this tradition of knowledge transfer. And there are so many other benefits, like there are Vadagoshtis, debate sabhas, which happen across our country. So what's the use of such debates? We get to know nuances, the tiny niche stances taken by Bhagavad-Acharya in Vedanta, and how other systems of philosophy, other darshanas have been countered, and how few things which are are declared or which are professed in other systems of philosophy have been accepted. Such things are highlighted in such debates. So it also helps us in preserving such art forms which otherwise will meet up sorrow end. I'm sorry. And Vedanta, the study of Vedanta will also help someone who is academically interested in Vedanta to take part in such debates and such discourses. So these are the main uses of Vedanta. And so this is, now we have studied, now we have learned what is the use of studying Vedanta. We should also know what is Vedanta. I'll just put it in a simple manner, because what is Vedanta is a big subject in itself. Perhaps we take different births to understand what is Vedanta. So Bahunan Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. After so many births, in each birth we collect some samskaras, some important teachings of Vedanta, and then we move on to next birth, and when all such teachings culminate into a full life, that's when we get liberation. So what is this Vedanta put in a small capsule is as propounded by Bhagavad-Acharya is Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. That is, whatever we see in this world, in the only valid truth which we see in this world is the Parabrahma, the Supreme Reality, and the every other thing what we see is mithya, is just illusionary. It has a temporary existence. The foundational existence of all these entities are Ishvara, the Parabrahma himself, where Parabrahma itself is what is true, and also the Jiva, the individual soul, is nothing but a form of the Parabrahma. So this is the essence of Vedanta. Of course, Upanishads and Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita goes on to describe it further, but this is the main essence of Vedanta. And what do you do with, when we encounter such a fact that Brahmaiva Satyam, or Parabrahma alone is the truth, how do we benefit by even knowing that? This is some question which would definitely come to us. So the answer lies in this fact that say for a jeweler, he would say take half a kg gold and make bangles and necklaces and rings out of it, and customers who come to his shop they would specify that we want bangles and those, or we want necklaces or something like that. But for the jeweler, ultimately for him it is gold being sold. He just sees all of them in the form of gold, but the customer sees them in the form of necklaces or earrings or whatever. So this is the difference. We have to look at this creation, Srishti, or the Prapancha, the world, as forms of Ishvara, forms of Brahma himself, forms of the supreme reality, and we all to be just an form of Parabrahma. The Jiva also being one form of the Parabrahma is what Vedanta declares. So this is proven by many Vedantic statements, the Mahavakyas like Tattvamasi, or Aham Brahmasmi, or Prajnanam Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma, the main four principal Mahavakyas of these Upanishads continuously preach. It's called Abhyasa in Shastra. That is, it is, this point is made ingrained so many times. The same thing is repeated quite often. One might even feel that it's unnecessarily being repeated, but this is something which Shastras use Abhyasa as a method for imbibing knowledge. The more you repeat, more it gets into your mind. So Shastras make use of this and repeat such Mahavakyas or repeat such teachings across different granthas like the Upanishads or the Bhagavad Gita or the Brahma Sutras. So essentially Vedanta is about the Parabrahma, the universal existence of Parabrahma alone, and everything else to be Mithya, even the Jiva to be a form of Parabrahma. So this much is Vedanta in a nutshell. Of course, it is easy to tell the meaning or use the shloka and convey the meaning, but very difficult to imbibe this practice. That will happen only through a guru. So guru is something which is guru is someone who is essential for this Vedantic pursuit. Vedanta knowledge should come through a guru. Bhagavad Padacharya says that those who come out of this Guru Shishya Parampara and declare their own tradition, or even for armchair philosophers, he calls them Moodha, a fool, and Sampradayavit. So that is one who has come out of this Guru Shishya Parampara and makes his own knowledge or his own inferences, experiences. He tells us Vedanta is considered to be a fool. So there is no point going behind such teachers of Vedanta. So we should go to a guru who is a Shrotriya Brahmanishta. Vedas tell that a guru is one who is a Shrotriya, who has studied the Vedanta and other such things to the extent possible, and is a Brahmanishta, that is who has this nishtha, that is who is firmly with full conviction he is in the Brahma, that is he is merged with the Brahma. So someone who is enlightened, to put it in simpler words. So these are the essential requirements of a guru. Bhagavad Padacharya, when questioned by his Shishyas in Prashnotter Ratnamalika, Ko Guruhu, he replied, that is, who is a guru? When he was asked that question, he replies, Adhikata Tattvaha Shishya Hitaya Udyata Satatam. That is, one who has studied Vedanta, who has known the Vedantic truth, and also he has experienced this truth, Adhikata Tattvaha, and also Shishya Hitaya Udyata Satatam. One who is ever ready to help his Shishyas, his disciples, to remove them from this existence, birth and death, the cycle of birth and death. So to bring them out and to help them in whatever manner possible. Such is the quality of Guru, is what Bhagavad Padacharya says. So these are essentials of Guru. Now there's another issue here while discussing this is, how do we identify a Guru? It's a common question, because especially in the Kali Yuga we find many fraudsters as Guru. So how do we identify a genuine Guru is something which present day people generally ask, and working professionals all the more, because they don't have time to sort of do the Guru Mukhyana Adhyayana, so they want some quick fixes. So but then they're not sure whether to approach a person because they don't know whether he's the right guru or is he not from the legitimate lineage. So the answer to this is only one. There's only a simple answer that there is no good guru or bad guru. Guru is a tattva, a philosophy within you, a person within you. Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagini. That is, Ishvara, the God, and Guru and the Atma, the soul, are nothing but the same entity, but in three different forms. So if you are a genuine seeker, if you are genuine in your pursuit for Vedanta, and if you have genuine queries and which needs to be sorted out, it is Ishvara's duty, or your Guru's duty or your Atma's duty. It will ensure that you get a Guru instantly. That is the only answer to this. So there is no way of quantifying a Guru, whether he is a good or bad person. Of course, there may be some general guidelines for good Guru, bad Guru, but essentially, depending on your sincerity, your bhakti, your devotion, your shraddha, your faith, your God himself manifests as Guru. And how to ensure that this happens to you is by following Swadharma, that is whatever scriptural actions have been prescribed for you. If you are born in a Brahmana Varna, perhaps performing Sandhya Vandana, the Nitya Puja and Agni Karya for Brahmacharis, Upasana, etc. for the Grahasthas. These are some things which needs to be followed. And if you are born in other Varnas like Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, each Varna is destined to do some duties. So the performance of the duties for the respective Varnas is itself sufficient for Vedantic pursuit and also getting a good Guru. So the only way you get a good Guru is by performing our Swadharma and also practicing Sadachara, that is imbibing good qualities. Of course, for Vedantic pursuit, there is another requirement called Sadhana Chatushtaya, the fourfold requirement. The first one being Viveka, that is the knowledge, discrimination, the power to discriminate, to find out what is real and not real, what is Satya, what is Sat and Asat in this world, and then Vairagya, to have dispassion, to realize that all these objects which we see are temporary in nature, they are not permanent, and also the Shat Sampat, so Samadhi Shat Sampat, the 6 qualities, they are considered as one of the requisite. It's a 6-fold sub requisite. So that is, Shama is to control your mind, and Dhamma is to control your senses, Titiksha, Uprati, forbearance, and having patience. Then Samadhana, that is concentration, focus on the goal, and also Shraddha, faith in the words of Guru and the Shastra, that whatever the Guru and Shastra say, that is ultimate truth. And perhaps questioning the Guru is not wrong, but arguing and trying to prove the Guru is wrong. So questioning the Guru with all humility is allowed. Tatviddik pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Krishna himself says that when wait for the right time and go to when you reach a Guru, wait for the right time. Prashnakala pratiksha. It's another discussion separately. Wait for the right time, and sincerely, with all humility, post your questions, and you will definitely be answered with the questions. That's how Upanishadic stories also come in that manner, that a disciple who approaches a sage, humbly, with all humility, poses his questions and then gets answers. That's how it happens. So Sadhana Chatushtaya, and so this 6-fold subcategory, and then Mumukshatva, viveka, vairagya, samadhi, shat sampatti, and mumukshatva, that is that intense desire that you want liberation at any cost, is something which constitutes the four requisites for Vedantic study. And this I mean, as each quality has been listed out now, following that to the extent possible itself ensures sadhana chatushtaya. Of course, following swadharma, doing the karmas which have been prescribed for you in whichever varna or ashrama you are, that itself will lead to will lead to this sadhana chatushtaya, and it will lead to something called chitta shuddhi. It will purify your mind, and it will enable you to undergo shravana of Vedanta, that is listening to Vedanta under a guru, a good guru, an enlightened guru, because only an enlightened guru can enlighten another shishya, who will in turn enlighten another shishya. That's how Guru Parampara is. An enlightened lamp will enlighten another lamp. So this fourfold requisite is a must for Vedantic study, and that can be achieved by following Swadharma, is something which should be made a note of. Whatever varna we are in, or whichever ashrama we are in, the four varnas being Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and the four ashramas being Brahmacharya, Grastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. Whatever duties have been prescribed for such ashramas, that is and varnas, that should be followed. Besides, whatever is the actions prescribed, because these days many of us don't follow our swadharma. We are forced to take up jobs or some other profession, vocation, which may not essentially be the swadharma, but we should also take that as swadharma, do our best in that with full honesty, integrity, sincerity, and excellence. We must perform that. This also leads to chitta shuddhi. It helps in acquiring in obtaining sadhana chatushtaya, and also we get the grace of the Guru, the grace of the Ishvara, the Anugraha, and with that we can pursue in Vedanta and ultimately achieve moksha. So this is a sort of the broader marga, the path for Atma Sadhana. This is how it has been designed by rishis, through designed in the Veda, and professed by rishis and Jagat Gurus and sannyasis. So this has been passing on to us since generations. So and this has been imbibed in our culture. The Bharatiya culture, Indian culture itself is such a fantastic culture, or fantastic framework, which ensures that philosophy, Vedanta, is imbibed in every action. So if you see professions, indigenous professions like the Chaturvarna, they are imbibed with Vedantic truths. Say a farmer, he sows his seed and gets his fruit. So all these things are part of Vedantic pursuit for him. So it has come down through ages, through Guru Shishya Parampara and pursuit. So even a layman sort of has this Vedantic bhavana in him, only in Bharatavarsha. Of course, the pursuit of moksha, Vedanta, is something which is different, and very few, like Aneka Janma Samsiddhim Bahunan Janmanam Ante. So out of so many thousands of people who are interested, who are not interested in Vedanta, one would be interested, and thousands of such interested people one would actually pursue, and thousands of such people who are pursuing, one would perhaps attain moksha, is what Krishna says. But nevertheless, in our Varnashrama dharma is designed in such a manner that Vedanta is also inculcated in our daily life. But unfortunately, we go to secular job these days, we have no other go. What happens there is something which we should all make a note of. So as already discussed, say for example, we may slog in the office, and then ultimately we may be laid off, or or a company itself might get into bankruptcy, and it might be dissolved. So such situations happen. How do we deal with such situations? When I meant Varnashrama Dharma inculcating such Vedantic thoughts, I meant that a farmer meets this situation in a daily life. He has control on only the sowing of the seed and perhaps plowing and watering or whatever is in his hands. But beyond that, there could be excess rainfall and the crops might be lost, or there might be a deficiency in rainfall and crops again could get dried out, or everything might be fine. He would have harvested and then rats could eat up the produce. So this is something which a farmer, or every indigenous occupation uh, professional would face it. But the working professionals are unable to take up this sorrow of this such an event, so such an occurrence. This is where Vedanta, as in inculcating Vedanta in culture, comes to importance. This is not unfortunately because of the individualistic model which we all work in. Vedanta is not taught in offices, or it's not taught at even at the home, even at homes, at our houses. So we don't know how to deal with such situations of sorrow or calamities. So this is Vedanta must be inculcated at the home level, at the office level, everywhere. And the present, you can it's a modern approach to management. People have started using Bhagavad Gita and other such things, the teachings of Vedanta, for professional excellence and stress management and such things. Of course, that is not the main aim, as we already discussed. Main aim of Vedanta is Atma Sadhana only, but we also see these to be the side benefits, the Anusangika, as they say in Shastra, that they're byproducts of Vedanta, the calmness of mind and such things. So for such purposes also Vedanta is being used. So only way to inculcate this in working professionals is working professionals must dedicate, if they have not studied Vedanta in their in their childhood, or their time is never lost in Vedanta. Anytime you are allowed to enter, and there's no age restriction or something. So Vedanta should be should be studied, and the teaching should be practiced by each one of us. That can be performed in an easy manner, which of course we'll be discussing later. What we need to also understand is such situations, when instances where we face a failure in life, or get lose out on a promotion, or get demoted even by others. So when such situations occur, we tend to ask this question, why me? So this is a very common phrase used these days. So the question, why me, we easily ignore the finding out an answer for it, because we know it inherently that the answer to the question, why me, doesn't have a easy answer. It's very complicated, and you don't want to get into it, so you choose to ignore the answer and move on with other things. So essentially Vedanta asks such questions only. Why me? Why was I born? Why am I suffering so much? Why are so many miseries only in my life? Why is my friend leading a very happy life, despite both of us having the same background or something? So such questions definitely must be answered, and answered in the right manner using Vedanta. Of course, it should not turn out to be a competitive struggle where both both peers try to make out come up in the ladder by pushing others down. So that should not be the end result of it. Vedanta should be the pursuit, and Vedantic answers should be the answer for such questions, is what I am trying to tell. So Vedantic pursuit will help us in analyzing such situations, us to gear up for such situations or even face such situations which we are already facing. Unfortunately, such questions come only when we have a calamity or when we have faced a calamity or maybe an unfortunate death at the death of a kin or a relative or near dear one, and or maybe we are met with an accident and we are lying we are confined to the bed. So only such situations we think of Vedanta, Ishvara, God, and other such things. This is an unfortunate you know, occurrence these days. When we are hale and hearty, when things are good, it's better to think of Vedanta. We conveniently choose to ignore philosophy, Vedanta, when we are happy, but we tend to think of it only when we are having a calamity. At that time, our body itself is not in a position to cooperate Vedantic pursuit. So there's no point. I mean, I'm not telling that it should not be done at that time, at the event of a calamity, but it is essential there also. It is all the more essential. But what is required is even when we are having a normalcy in our life, we must pursue Vedanta. So I've now given the importance of Vedanta, the what actually Vedanta is, and sort of how Vedanta relates to our daily life. Now we should also go ahead, and I'll be talking about how this Vedanta can be studied and practiced by individuals, especially the working professionals. This is the next segment of this talk. Currently, the pandemic, though we all are suffering in various ways due to the pandemic, and there are many others who are suffering more than us, but working professionals more also have got a curse and a boon, if I had to say, is the remote working or work from home, something which has been popularized during pandemic. We must put into good use the facility which was not available for our parents or our grandparents. Many of us we work from home, or at least we go to office once in a while. It's not a regular 9 to 9 job or something, which was the case just before the pandemic. But even before the pandemic also, there have been situations where people are stuck in traffic jams, and they waste 2-3 hours listening to music or something, which is not a bad thing. But then that time could be dedicated for Vedantic study, especially Vedantic study. When I say, is something which is comes out through Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. This is an Upanishadic Vakya. It comes in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad also, that to realize the soul, you will have to first listen to the Vedantic truths from a guru, from a qualified guru, and from this we follow. After the listening to it, we do manana, that is, we analyze whatever the guru has told, and continuous analysis will also lead to imbibing these thoughts, and then the Nididhyasana, that is firmly establishing ourselves in the truth. So this is the process, threefold process of Vedantic sadhana. The Shravana part of it, listening to a guru, Vedantic truths from a guru, is something which has been made a lot easier in the present day time due to the advances in the technology. Nowadays we can connect to anyone sitting in any part of the world through both video conferences, or maybe even just a normal telephonic call. A lot of such Vedantic knowledge transfer is happening through by use of technology. There are many organizations also which are dedicatedly working for it. For example, Advaita Academy, and there are other even individual scholars on a personal basis. They teach Vedanta for different groups of listeners, different people with different set of pursuits. So that is something which is the greatest boon of the pandemic, if I have to say. This also helped so having such resources, which of course our parents and grandparents couldn't even think of. Nobody would have thought of dedicating say 2-3 hours of Shravana, listening to Vedantic talks, especially our parents and our grandparents wouldn't have even thought of such thing, because dedicating 3-4 hours of such Shravana, they would it would call for giving up on their careers, so they couldn't do that because of their own commitments and other such things. So, but then nowadays we are free to do that. Every day, even 3-4 hours, there are people, working professionals, who are in very high positions. They listen to Vedantic truths through different groups on using apps like Zoom and other such video conferencing tools. So and audio talks, or there is YouTube and other such platforms where every day many scholars post Vedantic knowledge and other granthas of Vedanta. So people listen to it and then they make use of it. So working professionals must listen to Vedantic talk. At least they should ensure that they listen to half an hour or 1 hour of a talk every day. And the advantage of technology is the technology has penetrated to such an extent that we also we are capable of listening to Vedantic talks in our own language, whichever language is comfortable to us. Even languages foreign to our Bharatavarsha, there are Vedantic talks in German, Japanese, and so many languages. People can make use of such facilities available, and in this take this as a stepping stone for Vedantic Shravana, and then perhaps when with this continuous Shravana, again there's a shloka which tells with continuous Vedantic Shravana you get the punya, the merit which you get by performing so many thousands of yagas. So people, working professionals, should take this opportunity and try to dedicate all the free time for Vedantic Shravana. It could start off with even a 15-minute talk every day on YouTube or any other platform, and that would slowly increase to 1 hour and maybe 2 hours, and whenever they are free, and that will help them, of course, as I discussed, for karma yogic sadhana, facing different situations in life, and also mainly the atma sadhana is something which is the benefit of Vedantic study. Other methods of Vedantic pursuit could be chanting shlokas every day. There are so many numerous compositions by Bhagavad Acharya. In each composition, he tries to introduce Vedantic truths and Vedantic teachings, in such a subtle manner that you never realize that this is Vedanta. Even for example, very well-known Bhaja Govindam also has so much of Vedantic truth imbibed in it, inherent in it. So the regular chanting, as I already discussed, causes abhyasa. The repeated chanting makes the truth stay in our mind for a longer duration, and this helps in firmly and having this firm conviction of the truth, and helps us in increasing our shraddha, our faith towards the shastras and guru vakyas. So chanting shlokas, performing our own swadharma, and because of the pandemic, whatever varna we are born in, we are free to follow our varnashrama dharma. It could be even perhaps having a tilaka or whatever is our kulachara. We have bhasma or kumkum tilaka or whatever is our family tradition. Following family traditions also help in chitta shuddhi, purifying the mind, and pursue helps that in that chitta shuddhi in turn helps in Vedantic pursuit. So we are now free to say perhaps wear a set of dhoti or for women saris in our for 24 hours, because we are not going out for most of our time, and such simple pursuits can also be done by working professionals, because this is where like how in a factory we are expected to wear headgear and uniform and boots to protect ourselves. Likewise, Shastra also tells recommends dhoti or the sari or whatever the traditional dresses as not alone, not just a mere outfit, but also something which protects you, which also ensures that you are following dharma. So this may not be a requisite, it is not a compulsion, but nevertheless it is always better to follow what our family has been following, or whatever the family tradition is called kulachara. Whatever is our kulachara, we are supposed to follow. When there are so many things which we follow in our kulachara because of our family, we might as well follow these which were part of our family traditions. Such things are, because of pandemic, working professions which who would otherwise not have an opportunity to follow family traditions can follow. Then there are so many vratas, festivals which we all follow, which because of our work we might have ignored, or perhaps we wouldn't have found a desire or an interest to find what it is, or even maybe the rites for our ancestors, the Shraddha karmas, we can take them up and we can do it, because the with what excellence, with what attitude we perform karmas is what decides our chitta shuddhi, and that itself decides our Vedantic pursuit. So we can be more sincere towards our karma, whatever is prescribed by the Shastras for our Varna, in accordance to the Varnashrama Dharma. So this is another thing which working professionals must resort to. Of course, primarily for Vedantic sadhana, they have to do Shravana of Vedantic texts. Bhagavad Padacharya has considered, like how rishis considered that different situations in Kali Yuga, also in different situations people would come across, say a person every day, a person is supposed to take bath every day twice, and that is what Shastras say. But then Shastras understand that one may not be able to do it. Say you take bath and then go out and then you come back in the night, late night, it may not be advisable to take bath at that time. So Shastras tell that recommend for one bath only once, or if you are suffering from fever, Shastras also tell no need of any bath, and just chant a mantra in which you are initiated, and that should do. So when Shastras accommodate so much for the various situations which we undergo, Bhagavad Padacharya also, considering the various capabilities of different individuals, he has composed highly complicated Vedantic truths through Prasthanatraya Bhashya. Those who are Uttamadhikaris, who have studied advanced texts and also performed, who are into Vedantic practice, can study them. Those who are not so mature enough in Vedanta, can study other Laghu Prakaranas like Viveka Chudamani and Panchadashi. Those who cannot jump directly to Prasthanatraya Bhashya can study this Prakarana Granthas or small texts. And those who are still not in a position to understand Prakarana Granthas, for them he has composed many stotras and shlokas like Bhaja Govindam and Shivananda Lahiri, Saundarya Lahiri, so many such shlokas. So any one of this pursuit, which depending on your capability, depending on your guru's advice, you all must pursue this. And of course, as I said, there are many ashrams, many gurus, and of course Bhagavad Acharyas for Amnaya Pithas, which continuously disseminate Vedantic knowledge to Shishyas. So we can approach the Chaturamnaya Pithas in Sringeri, Puri and Dwarka, and in the Joshi Mata in north. So such that is for the advanced aspirants, even for the layman also, that is an open door. And for those who want to pursue Vedanta as an academic pursuit, and also Atmasadhana, such Pithas are also there. There are other Gurukulas like Arshavidya Gurukula, and many more Vedantic Gurukula like Ramakrishna Mission and other such things, other such venues. So primarily for working professionals, perhaps listening, I would conclude with this, that for working professionals, dedicating perhaps half an hour or whatever is convenient, maybe minimum of 15 minutes to 30 minutes for Vedantic study, Vedantic Shravana through various platforms available because of the technology, and also imbibing slowly, understanding meaning of the shlokas which we read, and perhaps even reading one shloka of Bhagavad Acharya every day and trying to follow the meaning, the purpose for which Acharya has written that shloka. Trying to imbibe these teachings into our life is something which is essential for all, especially for working professionals, so that they can tackle various life situations in their jobs, in their personal life easily. Uh, with this, yeah, there is, of course, there is numerous scope to learn more and even pursue more. The only suggestion would, from my side, would be to do all this in Vedanta with the primary purpose of attaining moksha, liberation, and not perhaps some of them enter this field with an interest to make money or fame or something like that. So setting aside all such materialistic benefits with the sole purpose of Atma Sadhana, Shastras declare that moksha is the Parama Purushartha, that for which we should strive, as much as we strive for our jobs, much more perhaps we must strive to realize ourselves. So Vedantic study is very much essential in each one of our lives. So we must take care and ensure that we study this Vedanta, imbibe its practices, and also a small note here is to pass on this Vedantic knowledge to the next generation, our children, grandchildren, in whichever manner possible. Perhaps to study it to such an extent that we can teach it to them, or even make arrangements so that students and children, especially in their youth, don't get distracted and go on the wrong path, and ensure that they learn Vedanta and they also learn how to tackle life situation, because it is all the more going to get perhaps going to get more worse in the future if the more we get go away from Vedanta, the more we enter into samsara and more problems. So our children need not suffer the way we are suffering, and that's the same attitude with our parents and our grandparents would have thought that our parents should not have suffered as much they suffered, and our parents also think that we should not suffer that the way they have suffered. So it is right to think that our children or the next generation should not suffer the way we have suffered. So we should ensure that Vedantic teaching passes on, and the parampara stays alive. It should not be a mere academic pursuit, and you find scholars passing out various exams of Shastriya exams. It should also be an common man's pursuit. Common man should have enough Vedantic knowledge for his own survival. You do survive without Vedantic knowledge as well, but then Vedantic knowledge for the pursuit of Atma Jnana, that much knowledge each one should have, must strive to have. So with this, I would conclude this talk. I urge many more Vedantic scholars come up because of good Vedanta Shravana, and I also request each one, as I suggested, for daily dedicating at least half an hour daily in our lives for Vedantic practice through whatever mode Guru prescribes. And perhaps it could also mean japa of a mantra, whatever the Guru prescribes, that also should be performed. With this, I would conclude whatever I wanted to say. Thanks a lot for your patient hearing. I thank Sanatana Dharma Charitable Trust once again for their organizing Margazhi Gana Nrityotsava and providing a platform for Pravachana Kartas. And I also humbly thank, with all humility, thank my Guru, Vidwan Shri Subramanyam Vaidyanathan Mahodaya Acharya, and also other my Guru Parampara. I do my prostrations to them, and once again thank the listeners. Thank you very much. Dhanyavadaha. I will chant the Mangala Shlokas now. ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विश्वशेखरभारतीं ब्रह्मैव सत्यम्। ॐ धन्यवादः।